Elena and I had been together 4 years when I found the folder. We'd been engaged for 2 months by then. 10 weeks out from a wedding neither of us had stopped talking about since the proposal. Venues, playlists, whether her cousin's kids were old enough to be flower girls without someone crying. We'd built the kind of life people compliment without meaning to be envious of it. Her drafting table in the corner of the living room, my running shoes always by the door, a shared calendar color-coded in a system only the two of us understood. Normal things. Good things or so I believed at the time. I found it by accident, the way you find most things that end up mattering. She'd asked me to grab her passport from the file drawer for the honeymoon booking, and behind the passport, in a manila folder she'd never once mentioned, was a signed offer letter from a design firm in Vancouver. Senior architect. Relocation package. A start date 3 weeks out. Her signature was already on the acceptance page, dated 5 weeks earlier, a full month before either of us had picked a venue. Back when she'd sat across from me at dinner, describing centerpiece options like there was nothing else on her mind. I didn't say anything that night. I told myself there had to be an explanation, that maybe she was still deciding that a signature on paper wasn't the same as a decision made. I've always been the kind of person who needs to understand the shape of a thing before I react to it, which some people read as calm, and other people, over the years, have read as slow. So I looked. Not proud of it, but I looked. Her laptop was open on the counter 2 nights later, and there was a browser tab still loaded. A one-way flight, her name on it, departing the same week as the start date on the contract. A separate email from a leasing agent confirming they could list our apartment for sublet any time after the 15th, per your request. 17 days. That was the number I kept doing math around. Not 50 years, not the rest of a marriage. 17 days until whatever this was stopped being a private decision I'd stumbled into and became a plane taking off with her on it. I didn't confront her. I want to be honest about why. It wasn't patience and it wasn't cowardice, not exactly. It was that I could feel, underneath the shock, an old and familiar instinct kicking in, the one that had made me give up a promotion 2 years earlier so we could stay in the same city while she built her portfolio. I'd made that call alone too, in a sense. Told her about it after I'd already turned it down, framed it as a gift instead of a negotiation. I understood, sitting there doing the math on her flight, that we'd both been making unilateral decisions about our shared life. She'd just made a bigger one, so I made mine. I called Priyanka, the director at my old firm who'd offered me that promotion, and asked if the position, or anything like it, was still open. It was, in a different form, a lateral move to head their local strategy team. No relocation required, better money. I said yes before I let myself think too hard about what saying yes meant. I talked to a lawyer about the lease, learned we could break it cleanly if both names came off by the end of the month, and quietly started boxing up my books on evenings when Elena was at the office, telling her, when she noticed, that I was just doing a purge before the wedding. For 12 days we lived 2 entirely separate lives in the same apartment. She tasted 3 different cakes with her mother and sent me photos of each one with little commentary. Too dry, too sweet, this one. I sat through a seating chart argument about her uncle and my aunt as if it mattered where they'd sit in June. It was strange, keeping a whole future alive on the surface while quietly dismantling my half of it underneath. And I won't pretend it didn't cost me something. But I'd rather carry that weight honestly than pretend I hadn't seen what I'd seen. The engagement party was at her parents' house the Saturday before her flight. 40 people, most of them family, string lights over the patio, a folding table doing a poor job of holding all the food. Her father made a toast about timing, about how you know when you know. Then Elena stood up with her glass, and I watched her decide, in real time, to tell everyone at once rather than tell me alone first. She framed it beautifully. An incredible opportunity, she said, one she couldn't have imagined turning down. And of course David and I will figure out the wedding date once we're settled, she said, looking at me like she was handing me a gift I hadn't asked for, in front of 40 people who couldn't say no on my behalf even if they'd wanted to. I let the applause finish. Then I stood up too. I told them I already knew, that I'd found the contract 3 weeks earlier, the flight 2 nights after that, and that I understood exactly what kind of opportunity it was, because I respected her work enough to know she wouldn't take it lightly. Then I told them the rest, plainly, without raising my voice. That I'd given notice on the apartment, that both our names were coming off the lease by the end of the month, and that I'd accepted a new position here, in this city, one that meant I wasn't going anywhere. There wasn't a wedding date to figure out later, I said, because there wasn't going to be a wedding. Nobody clapped for that part. Her mother's hand went still on the table. Elena didn't drop her glass or raise her voice either. She just looked at me the way you look at a door you didn't realize had already been closed from the other side, quietly, sometime while you weren't watching. We didn't argue that night. Not really. There wasn't anything left to argue about. The lease was already ending. The job was already accepted. The flight was already booked. All the decisions that usually get fought over in a breakup had already been made, separately, by each of us, weeks before either of us said a word about it out loud. What was left was just the announcing. She flew out on schedule. I moved into a smaller place 2 neighborhoods over, closer to the new office, and kept exactly 1 photo from the 4 years, not out of sentiment so much as honesty. Pretending none of it happened felt like its own kind of lie. My mother asked, gently, why I hadn't just talked to Elena the moment I found the folder, why I let it run those extra 2 weeks in silence. I didn't have a clean answer for her then. I'm not sure I have one now, except that some part of me needed to know I could still choose something, even quietly, even alone, before I let the conversation happen out loud. We've exchanged maybe a dozen messages since, civil, brief, the kind you send someone you loved and no longer know how to talk to, a forwarded mail piece, a question about a shared account finally closed out. People ask me sometimes if I regret not confronting her the night I found the folder, whether things might have gone differently if I'd said something right away instead of quietly building my own exit for 2.5 weeks. I don't think so. I think if I'd confronted her immediately, we would have had the fight everyone expects, the kind that ends in promises neither person fully means, followed months later by the same folder, the same flight, just later and angrier. Instead, we each found out, in our own time and our own way, what the other one had already decided, and it turned out we'd both already chosen, just not each other.